So when it comes to the world of guitar amps, I've realized over the years that I've actually been late to quite a few parties. I was late to the modeling party when it came to the world of helixes. I was even late to the Katana party when it came to the world of like digital amps. And when it came to the world of profiling and well, this guy right here, I was really late to this party. Now, my story with the Quad Cortex actually goes back a number of years, but I'll give you the very quick cliff notes. I first started using it on a regular basis about a year ago after having had a couple of months experiencing my first ever all-in-one modeler, the Helix, and I was more than impressed. It was like there was just something very different about the Quad Cortex. Like, it wasn't just another Helix competitor. It was something very unique about its emphasis, specifically when it came to profiling, which was actually the thing that initially intimidated me most about the unit. But as with many things in life, I decided I was going to face that fear head on, so I asked my buddy if I could profile his Princeton. It was like in an instant, I knew the second I heard the playback on that amp that the profiling capabilities on this thing right here were serious. I mean, that one single profile probably ended up becoming my most used amp on a unit with more than like 50 different presets. It's like I finally began to really understand the profiling game and why exactly people loved it so much, so I started using it, and I started using it more and more on different videos and during different live shows whenever I play. And with all the different capabilities and the different software updates, specifically the more recent one where you could finally get the VSTs on there, and with it being such a digital-based unit, for the first time in a very long time with a piece of gear like that, I really stopped asking the question of like, what's next? I had done that so many times over the years with so many different pieces of gear. I really thought that Neural had found their lane with this thing, and outside of a couple of different software updates, I didn't really think there was much else that they were going to do with it. Well, that was until yesterday at the airport when I opened up my laptop. And I was just scrolling through YouTube, and I happened upon something that I hadn't really seen before. You see, as with when pretty much any new product comes out, the guitar YouTube world seemed to be buzzing about it, and it seemed to be from Neural DSP. So I was like, okay, what is it? Did they come out with like some sort of new archetype or something like that? But no. And it couldn't have been a Quad Cortex 2. I mean, what else are they even going to do with the hardware updates like we said before? Like, there's no way that's possible. But that's when it came to me, because I looked and it was like it was presented in these big bold letters, and all I could see was the title, Nano. You see, I had noticed this trend before, not just specifically when it comes to 2000s iPods. About a year ago, I began to notice it with quite a few different digital modeling units, and it wasn't just that they were getting like bigger or smaller. It was like whenever these companies would come out with their newest modeling unit, it wasn't just that they were coming out with the sequel version of something. It was like they were doing this more stripped back version every single time. I mean, Kemper came out with their player profiler, Line 6 came out with their Podgo Express, and of course, wouldn't you know, after all these years, Neural DSP would come out with this thing right here. Well, let's open it first and see what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, let me really quickly introduce you to the Nano Cortex. But what even is this thing? Well, let me start by telling you what it's not. This is not a Quad Cortex, nor is it the Quad Cortex 2. It's something different entirely that can do a lot of similar things, so let me take you in on that. You see, the Quad Cortex is a lot of different things, a modeler, a profiler, an all-in-one floorboard unit, but with the Nano Cortex, basically what they decided to do is just strip all of that back. We're going to take away the modeler. It's not really an all-in-one floorboard unit. We're just going to make this thing a single profiling unit, which seems to be part of the big trends nowadays with things like Tonex. But I think when you really start using it, you have to go even further than that, because it's not like it's just doing one thing that the Quad Cortex does. The layout is, well, completely different, and that creates a completely different experience. The biggest change in that experience being that you're losing the famous touchscreen in favor of knobs, which, as you probably could guess, makes for a big difference, nothing necessarily in tone, but in workflow. You see, with the original Quad Cortex, let's say I had gotten a tone that I liked. And I wanted to change something about that, I'd just go through the touchscreen and I'd be like, oh. Whereas with the Nano, if I had found a tone that I liked,
that's where the knobs would come into play. And if I wanted to switch out an amp or something more specific, that's where this guy, the app, becomes one of the biggest difference makers. Because if I wanted a new amp, I would just start scrolling through all the profiles till I found something I like. I like that. I like that. Once I started really getting a hang of the knobs and how they interact with the app, that's when I started really scrolling and being like, okay, what presets can I actually find here? Now, discovering this thing in the context of other people's tones was all fine and good, but I felt like I wasn't really going to understand it and get to know it until I tried to profile something for myself, just like I did with the original Quad Cortex. When you can't find a mic stand, just go DIY and use a roll of tape. So at the end of the day, what did we learn and why in the world does this actually even matter? Well, let me tell you. This right here is the future, without question in my mind. And when I say that, I'm not necessarily even talking about the Nano Cortex specifically. I'm talking about Tonex, Kemper Profiler Player, Nano Cortex. This seems to be the model that companies are going down. They're not necessarily taking their big flagship models and making Helix 2, Kemper 2, Quad Cortex 2, or whatever, because software updates do exist, and that's way easier than just continually making sequels. So why not take whatever the most important element is of that individual modeler, in this case profiler, and just give it to people in an exceedingly stripped back fashion. Now, if I were to zoom in specifically to what I learned about the Nano Cortex, I think the thing that it really has going for it is the fact that you're able to not just share the captures, but actually be able to capture yourself with just one unit. Whereas a lot of other units I've seen, it's more about the collaboration and finding other people's tones. And this one really is about getting your own. Not that the collaborative aspect isn't there, but having it all in one unit, that's just pretty big. And when it comes to the obvious comparisons that are going to be made, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people actually respond to something like this and what different factors help them make different decisions on using something like this versus a Tonex or anything in that realm. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know. What do you think of the Quad Cortex? What do you think of the Nano Cortex? What do you think of all of these more stripped down profiling units that are coming out in general? Please let me know in the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. It is really cool to see what Neural DSP has been coming up with more recently, especially when it's a little bit different from what they're doing on the software side with some of their archetype plugins, especially with the Nano and asking the big questions like, who is this for? And like, if profiling keeps becoming more accessible, kind of like high-end modeling, what's the future even going to look like? And bringing all those questions to the forefront. Real talk, if you want to know anything more about the Nano Cortex, I got it from the homies at Sweetwater. The links are in the description. Make sure to check it out. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you want to do. Or if you're just curious about any of the other gear or amp pedals that I used in this video, make sure to check out those links. Also, thank you so much to all of my patrons. There's some exclusive extra content on there if you want to join the community. Like and subscribe if you had a good time. And most importantly, most important of all, have a fantastic day.